On tonight's episode, I interview Greg Felton. Greg Felton's been on the program many times over the years. He has a master's degree in political science. He's the author of 2 books, The Host and the Parasite and Exploding Middle East Myths. In this episode, we discuss whether or not Donald Trump will be impeached and if his presidency is indeed failing as half of the country thinks. Like the video, comment below, and enjoy the program. Greg Felton, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be here, Russell. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
A new national poll finds that Donald Trump's popularity as president has declined precipitously just over the past 2 weeks. His approval rating is 43%, while his disapproval has gone all the way up to 53%. Just 3 weeks into his administration, voters are already evenly divided on the issue of impeaching Trump, with 46% in favor and 46% opposed. Support for impeaching Trump has crept up 11% in the past 2 weeks. We'll focus on a few areas tonight, but just taking the overview, Greg, why is everything going so wrong for Trump?
Remember that Donald Trump was popular to the extent he was popular at all during the election because his opponent was so obnoxious. Hillary Clinton was unelectable, and so in that light, people voted for Trump figuring he was the lesser of 2 evils. Now that he is his own man, now that he has no opposition to his presidency, people are looking at him for what he is, and he is an obnoxious, immature, bombastic man-child. And it's not surprising that his popularity is plummeting. In fact, I predicted it would plummet because eventually people are going to look at Donald Trump and see the face of America, the same face that has been really the face of America since Ronald Reagan. But since Reagan until Trump, it has been covered over with the patina of respectability. Donald Trump is the first overtly unpresidential, amateurish president. And it's his personality, more than anything else, that people are rejecting. So when you look at what happened to Trump, this is a necessary purgative, let's say. Americans have to get rid of the swamp critters that have been running the country for the last 30 to 40 years. And Trump may give them that opportunity. I'm not surprised he's falling in the polls. I cannot see him rising in the polls unless somehow over the next few weeks or months he decides to act like a president and not like some peevish game show host.
Americans feel these overreaching, and they feel these overreaching with this Muslim ban or terrorist watch list nation ban. What do you make of that? And of course now with the judges overturning it, staying the executive order.
Well, Donald Trump did want to ban Muslims from entering, but Muslims from certain countries, not the really bad countries that are doing business with him. I mean, this was an example of just how clueless and disconnected Trump is from reality. He has a personal animus against Muslims, and he thinks, hey, I'm president. I'm going to ban them in the name of national security. The court system, however, is designed to protect people from the likes of Donald Trump. And when the court system says, no, Donnie, you may not do that, that's unconstitutional. Trump throws a tantrum and goes on Twitter and writes some all caps rant saying, let's fight this out, we'll see you in court, blah, blah, blah. He's acting like an adolescent. And the first thing he does upon getting elected is he doesn't try even to learn on the job. He goes into the presidency with the same sort of untutored mindset he had when he was a reality TV show host and a builder. He has no understanding of government. And I think that is what a lot of Americans are reacting to. We've elected a certifiable idiot to be president, and one that is probably more obnoxious than George W. Bush. Now, Bush was incompetent. He was a dry drunk. He was mentally unqualified to be president, but he had Dick Cheney pulling the strings, so Dick Cheney kept a rein on him. And people still bought into the myth that George Bush could be president because of the contrived terrorist attacks that have been plaguing the world since 2001. There is nothing that Donald Trump can hide behind to justify his existence as a bombastic, rude, obnoxious bull in a china shop. So we're going to see Donald Trump fall further and further, and he's going to run up against the institutions of government that probably, and I think probably will end up removing him from office. Because even though a lot of people who voted for Trump like his general position on things like Israel and corporations and education and whatnot, there's only so much embarrassment a country's going to withstand. And it may be simply the image of Trump as an idiot that will bring him down.
I think it goes without saying that it's completely unheard of. 3 weeks into the presidency, and half of the nation wants the president impeached.
Half the nation, because you have no Clinton to run against. There is no counterweight. You take off the counterweight, and like an elevator, and you take a counterweight off the elevator and it falls to the ground. There's nothing. It just doesn't work. And without some reason to like Trump, without someone worse than Trump to hate, you have to look at Trump on his merits, and he has none. Let's face it. I mean, let us take a scenario. Let us assume that Donald Trump actually does something for the good of America. Would we even know about it? Is his presidency so irredeemably tainted by hatred, public disapproval, and ridiculousness that his presidency is essentially crippled? One of the things Trump has said is that he wants to renegotiate or probably do away with the North American Free Trade Agreement. That, for Canada, would be a wonderful event. It would mean we wouldn't simply be serving the United States and throwing our resources across the border. We would be perhaps forced to sell to ourselves, to build up a national economy, to do things for Canadians, instead of being simply a supplier to the United States economic maw. But no, we don't hear that. All we hear is negative comments about Trump. Trump is doing not a good job, as we all can see, but when he does something right, he deserves to be given credit for it. But it's not possible anymore. It is simply, it's too late, and he hasn't been in office a month, and it's already over.
And for the most part, the Democrats that thought, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, they gave him the benefit of the doubt, and they don't like what they've seen, and they're already done.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, you look at the Democrats who have been approving Donald Trump's nominees. I mean, there have been three major. There's Barbara Boxer from California who's been voting for Trump's nominees. There's no excuse for this. And why are the Democrats not up in high dudgeon, objecting just formally over anyone that Trump has put up for a cabinet post? Not one of his cabinet positions is being held by somebody who deserves the post. So the Democrats are looking for Trump to self-destruct, which he's doing very nicely, but they really aren't opposing him as aggressively as they could. And that's a little disturbing because remember, the Democrats made Trump necessary. This is the fault of the Democratic National Committee. Donald Trump got elected because the Democrats didn't have the integrity to be honest and fair to Bernie Sanders. So this is the world that the Democrats gave us, and now they're complaining about it. Seems a bit hypocritical.
What about the people Trump has surrounded himself with?
Steve Bannon, Kellyanne Conway, and a host of others. These are people who exist only to reflect Trump's image back to himself. They are the vanity mirror in which he sees his own greatness reflected. Now, Kellyanne Conway has redefined bimbo. She has made three outrageous statements. One was my favorite was that Steve Spicer used
Sean Spicer.
Pardon me, thank you, Sean Spicer. Thank you. Sean Spicer said alternate facts. He used alternate facts. That's lovely. Here's a woman who has just admitted that the presidential spokesman is a liar. She has no internal censor, no internal editing device. She goes on about this Bowling Green massacre that never took place. And that, in the minds of many people, has been the reason why the ban on Muslim immigrants is justified. So here we have some alternate fact, namely a falsehood, being used to justify a repressive, unconstitutional measure that Trump will not recognize as unconstitutional because he doesn't want to. Now, it reminds me a little bit of Lyndon Johnson's presidency. Now, Johnson was a nasty piece of work who got America up to its eyeballs in blood in Vietnam. Within his cabinet, he had people like McGeorge Bundy, Alan Bundy, and other people. And he had two others named Bill Moyers and Pierre Salinger. Now, Moyers and Salinger were kept on in the White House because they were the criticism. They were the voice of reason for Lyndon Johnson. He at least kept them around so he could have a second point of view. Now, of course, he didn't use it very much, but at least he had someone there to break through the homogeneity of warmongering excesses. There is no such person, to my knowledge, in the Trump White House. There is nobody to give him sage counsel. There are just people that tell him what he wants to hear. Because Trump, to this day, I do not believe he knows what he's got himself into. He's acting like a child. And a child
I think Steve Bannon, of all of them, could perhaps be the
sanest of the lot?
Sanest of the lot, yeah.
Is that saying much?
Well, I mean, Kellyanne Conway, what is she, right? She's just a paid sycophant.
And what's disturbing, though,
she's not remember, she worked for Ted Cruz for a year.
That would damage anybody's intelligence. But what worries me is that Trump hasn't recognized just how dangerous she is. She cannot open her mouth and be taken seriously anymore. She is a living joke. And Trump is going to have to jettison her if he hopes to resurrect whatever future his presidency has.
And now, of course, this latest gaffe with her promoting Ivanka Trump's, I don't know what the hell it is, an evening wear line.
At Nordstrom's, yeah. And so there's this great picture on the internet of some big overweight bubbas in the South holding shotguns or something saying, "We're going to boycott Nordstrom's." It's really kind of caustic, but it shows just how ridiculous the Conway's quote is and what a lot of Americans think of Trump. But you see, Conway should have had better sense to do that. Nobody in the Trump White House, perhaps with the exception of Steve Bannon, who does appear to have some intelligence, although it may not be an attractive intelligence.
You may not like his political position, but he's an intelligent guy, believe it.
Right, and I believe you. He is intelligent. As I say, a lot of people don't like him in the White House because of his political views. But as I said earlier, he is, regardless, you may not like his intelligence, but it is intelligence. The rest of these people are idiots. And Donald Trump is entirely responsible for what they've been doing in the name of his administration in the United States. He has to decide whether he's going to have competent people around or sycophants. And Kellyanne Conway has to be jettisoned.
But she will be.
Oh, she will be, but how long will it take?
It'll be you're fired, Kellyanne Conway.
But he doesn't seem to be in charge of his administration. And that's another thing I think we mentioned briefly in a previous interview, is that it looks like the swamp critters have taken over. I mean, Donald Trump, when he was running for president, does not appear to be the same Donald Trump that's in power now. And how much accommodation has he had to make with the deep state, the sort of people that propped up the Republicans under George W. Bush and vilified Barack Obama for wanting to give health care to Americans? He's got to fight, and the entire governmental infrastructure is corrupt and riddled with swamp critters. So does Trump fight them? I mean, what I find interesting, if you look at the history of one of the president, I got to bring this up. This is Andrew Johnson, who took over after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. He was a bigot, thoroughly unlikable man, booze hound, and when he was sworn in, he had to be woken up from a drunken stupor to take the oath of office. But as president, he was a very harsh president on those who opposed him, on the Confederacy. He made enemies in both the Republican and Democratic parties, and he was impeached, although he just barely escaped conviction. Now, a lot of people are talking about impeachment of Trump already. The poor guy's not been around for a month, and already people are sick of him. The idea of impeaching Trump is an interesting possibility, but it also goes to the attitude of the opposition, where they go for extreme measures all at once. Trying to talk about impeachment is a bit much at this point, don't you think? Would it not be more rational to go after specific issues and go after Trump for his horrible nominees instead of trying to approve them, which is what the Democratic Party is doing? You know that Trump could be removed under Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, but it would amount to starting up a civil war in the United States between the Congress and the people who wanted to replace him. It is technically possible.
Yeah, well, I think what's going on here is that Pence and the GOP are getting Trump to push policies that they otherwise wouldn't have the political capital to do so. And when Trump is buried under all the negative press and, maybe he gets impeached, Pence will have no problem fulfilling the role of president.
I have to agree entirely. I think, Pence is the real danger in the government. Pence is a sociopath. He's a horrid person. He would, with the slickness and smoothness of a practiced politician, do what Donald Trump is doing and get away with it. Trump is really, despite his obnoxiousness, despite his stupidity, he at least is open about what he is. With Trump, with Mike Pence in power, we would have a greater degree of fascism than we do now. It would be horrible.
You say he's open about who he is, but the lack of transparency is one of the biggest issues right now.
Yeah, those, in as much as that's a serious matter, I don't consider it really as important as other things. Okay, he may be, even if he makes a little money on the side and it's illegal, okay, that's, in my view, that's a venial sin, not a mortal sin. What's worse is Donald Trump making, capricious decisions without even thinking about his consequences. Betsy DeVos gets confirmed as education secretary, yet she's about as illiterate as they come. And the Democrats voted for Betsy DeVos. I say I can't pick out one appointee that Trump has brought forth that is really worth voting for.
I like the CEO of Exxon.
Yeah, he's the foreign secretary. That's just brilliant. This is like the oil minister. It's like the oilocracy. There's a great line whether Exxon, the oil industry, even has to lobby Washington anymore because they've got their person in State Department. It's like Monsanto basically runs the Food and Drug Administration. I mean, it's a revolving door. There is no government. I mean, the greatest conflict in the world is conflict of interest. And I think the longer Trump's in power, the more obvious it's going to be. And maybe it'll just get to the point where people say enough is enough and states decide to secede from the union.
I don't think it gets that far. I think the thing is, eventually, no one's going to take him seriously.
Like Mad King George.
And the emperor has no clothes, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, because he doesn't shop at Nordstrom's anymore.
He has no choice. They don't cover the line anymore.
I know. It's
almost a size
too. It's almost sad. I mean, Donald Trump gets the presidency, and he's a living joke. The presidency has been so debased that no matter who gets elected, it's going to be very hard for anybody to take tough measures in the public interest without having to defend himself against a blizzard of abuse and ad hominems and fabricated news.
This is an anomaly. Although, having said that, Barack Obama did take a fair amount of it. But nothing like this is absolutely unheard of.
It is unheard of, and a lot of it is somewhat deserved because Trump is his own worst enemy. But as I say, if Trump tried to do something good, is it even too late for him? I mean, logically, he should say, look, I got elected.
I think he is doing some good, though, and it's just getting buried in all the other stuff.
With respect to NAFTA, I agree with you. But for the American public, though, even if he does do something good, it can't be seen as good. I think the Republicans and Democrats are both so anti-Trump, despite the fact that you have the senators and congressmen pushing through as appointees, that Trump he's like someone who tries to run a marathon but ends up breaking his ankle 50 yards out. I mean, he's going to try to run it out, but he's just not going to do very much.
The media. The voters are increasingly taking the media's side in this battle, this war, Trump's war with the media. He's losing that.
And that's bizarre because Trump should be winning that war. Because Trump was right when he ran the election. He said that CNN and other media outlets were prejudiced against him, as I call it, the Clinton News Network. And they actually put out some outrageously false stories on Trump.
You know who Michael Savage calls it, the Crescent News Network.
Oh, joy. The Crescent News Network. What, they're run by Muslims? I mean, the anti-Muslim prejudice in America is rife. The Judeo-Christian bigotry against Muslims is the great stain on American society. Muslims are no threat to anybody. There is no such thing as Muslim terrorism against America.
You can debate this point with Ralph Ellis, Greg.
Oh, I would love to.
Back to the media.
Yeah, the media is the problem. The media tried to cover up Clinton's criminality, but it couldn't. It tried its best, but even the Clinton News Network couldn't do it. But now Trump is right, but people don't want to support Trump because Trump is so unlikable. It's like you have two positive magnets. You can't pick one over the other because every time you push them together, they repel each other. You got to pick one, and both of them are equally bad. I mean, what do? You support Trump? How can you possibly support Donald Trump? The man is a sexist. He's a bigot. He's an incompetent. He's an overgrown man-child. How can you take him against the media? At least the media. Now we know what we can believe what we want in the media. The media sounds rational. The media sounds professional, or it can sound professional, and that's what will make all the difference. The average American is not a smart creature. They like the comfort of believing in reason. If the media sounds reasonable, they will believe it. If Trump sounds bombastic, they won't believe him, even though the bombast may be justified. I mean, how do you form a rational decision when all you're doing is making decisions based on emotion and image and prejudice?
I will say one thing, though. It's not just Trump. We mentioned Kellyanne Conway. I don't put any blame on Sean Spicer. That's his job to defend, right? But Mitch McConnell shutting down Elizabeth Warren.
That was horrid. That was beyond the pale. I could not believe when I read that story that all Elizabeth Warren is doing her job, opposing a nominee. And McConnell...
She's impugning Jeff Sessions.
She's being factual. It's not Mitch McConnell's place to censor debate in the Senate. Yet wasn't Mitch McConnell the senator who refused to entertain Barack Obama's nominee for the vacant Supreme Court seat? The people in the Republicans in the Senate are nasty people. This is an example of the sort of faux democracy Americans are struggling under. And the falseness of the democracy is visible in Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know, but how does McConnell get away? Well, look, he gets away with it because who's the Speaker of the Senate? It's Mike Pence. So we have this. I think you're right in one important point. There's going to be a coup d'etat again of some kind between the establishment Republicans and the off-the-wall Trumpians. And as I said earlier, I don't think Trump will finish out his first term.
So you do bank on impeachment, even though you mentioned earlier that's premature.
It's premature to talk about it now. And I think it's kind of sad that we're rushing to the to the extreme remedy at this point. But ultimately, whether it's impeachment or whether it's removal under Amendment 25th Amendment, or whether it's something even more violent than that, I don't know. But I just can't see Trump surviving in office for 4 years, given his first month in office.
What's been happening over there at GregFelton.com?
At GregFelton.com, I put up a new article looking at the bizarre and humorous behavior of Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu regarding the United Nations vote to condemn Israel's colonies as illegal and demanding that Israel retreat to the 1967 lines. It's hilarious. Donald Trump has made statements about Israel, peace, and Palestine that are so devoid of intelligence, you'd have to think he was written by a comedy writer. He writes, as to the UN, things will be different after January 20th. How different? The one time America doesn't do the emperor's bidding is it sort of tells the world that, hey, this is the way it's always been, and now it's going to be different. I call it the Zionist theater of the absurd. Abstention dissension is the Donald Trump story, and Bibi Goes Bughouse is the reaction of Benjamin Netanyahu, which is kind of interesting because he threatened to pull Israel out of the United Nations. And that was a very interesting threat because, as you should know, Israel is not a legitimate member of the United Nations. It has never been a legitimate member because it was only allowed in under the condition that it respect the private property, life, and land of the Palestinians that they had violated and dispossessed. Israel has never lived up to that, which is implicit in UN General Assembly Resolution 194. So, Israel should have been expelled ages ago. And the terms of its non-fulfillment of its membership criteria should have been enforced ages ago.
Greg Felton, your books, The Host and the Parasite, and Exploding Middle East Myths. God, that's hard to say. Where can the audience find these books and get in contact with you?
They can go to my website, GregFelton.com. On the front page, there is a large bookstore section where you can say click to order, and you can click to order The Host and the Parasite, which has its own page, and Exploding Middle East Myths, which is available on Amazon.com.
Any final words?
I just hope that Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, doesn't make too much of an ass of himself when he goes down to Washington, D.C.
I don't think he'll be hugging Donald Trump as he did with Barack Obama.
No, he won't. But the point is, I hope he realizes that the end of NAFTA is in Canada's best interest. And the only tragedy is I just don't think he's, in many ways like Trump, he's not smart enough to be a national leader. We have a man-child and a mannequin. And that's not a good recipe for either the Canadians or the Americans.
We'll see what happens. Greg Felton, great show. Thank you so much for being a guest on the program.
You're welcome, Russell. Until next time.